Good morning all. Today I'm going to take a look at this. It's the Silvercrest Smart Home Smart USB extension lead. It's essentially a mains extension lead. I think it's got a 1.4 meter cable to 3 socket outlets, but these are relay controlled, so I'm hoping that these can be individually switched. It wouldn't be a disaster if they switched as a group actually, but I'm sure they will be individually switched via some sort of remote mechanism. And when I was looking at this in Lidl, because that's where I bought this, I wasn't entirely sure how this system works because I'm not really a smart home enthusiast. But it seems that you have an app on your phone. It talks to the World Wide Web, so a server somewhere out in the cloud. That means that you can have your phone on 4G only. You don't need it on Wi-Fi, which is good. A gateway, which I also bought, and I'll show you that in a moment, also talks to this server, and that gateway communicates with your smart devices wirelessly over Zigbee. Now, to make this function, you've got to have the Zigbee gateway. So this is the gateway. Yes, it's just called gateway. Again, part of the Silvercrest Smart Home system, but also uses the Lidl Home app. Silvercrest is a brand that Lidl often sell, so to see these two things together is not unexpected. Works with Hey Google. Oh, that's going to set off my Google device. That'll start yakking at me in a moment. So once again, this is a Zigbee certified product, and if you look at all the blurb on the back, it talks about Zigbee 3.0. Again, I don't know anything about this stuff, but I'm going to have to learn. So the interfaces in this thing are a bit curious. It's obviously got Zigbee to talk to all of your remote devices, and of course the other things they were selling were these bulbs where you can change the colour. I have no use for bulbs that I can change the colour. But switched sockets, yes, I have a very specific use for these, and I'll give you a spoiler now. It's for the heaters in my workshop, so I can remote control switch them on, so I can do the sort of thing that an electric car can do, which is precondition the heating of the cabin. And if you think of my shed as a cabin, well, that all makes sense. But what I was curious about was this thing has a LAN socket, and I would have thought that this would make far more sense to have Wi-Fi. So this links into your Wi-Fi network in your home and then talks to all the remote devices using Zigbee. So why have they gone for LAN? Why have they gone for wired? That's really curious. Anyway, this video is specifically about this extension lead. So let's take a little look around the box. Now, as well as the Zigbee and the Hey Google and the Google Play to get this Lidl Home app, it talks about Smart Fast Charge. Now that's on the USB ports, of which there are 4, which is going to be really handy actually in the shed. Is this QC 3.0 compatible? I don't know. I can probably find out by using it to charge one of my known QC3. I've got a phone and a tablet which are both QC3. What else have we got on here? Actually, the languages interested me. We've got Great Britain, Ireland, I presume that's Northern Ireland, and Cyprus. Cyprus, I assume, because they use our 3-pin plug, and as such you've got Greek here as one of the languages on the box. That's presumably for Cyprus and Greece, but then you wouldn't use this in Greece because I don't think Greece uses this 3-pin plug arrangement, do they? Anyway, let's get this thing out of the box because this video is an unboxing and it's also going to be a strip down, so we'll take this thing apart and look inside. Okay, there it is. 3 main sockets. We've got a button and 4 USBs. Now these are 2.4 amps each, and it says the total load on these 4 can be up to 6 amps, which is pretty good. 2 manuals here, safety instructions. You always get a massive safety instructions. In fact, have you noticed if you buy a power tool these days, it's 99.9% safety instructions and 1 paragraph of how to use it. It's ridiculous, but then that's all going to change now that we've left the EU, isn't it? And a quick start guide. Shouldn't need that. So my first impression is that 1.4 meter cable is pretty fat. That looks solid, molded into this plug. We'll take a look at the fuse, but it should be 13 amps. And the reason I say that is because in the safety instructions, so actually this manual is useful after all, it says that the BS version of this device is 13 amps and therefore 3120 watts. But this is interesting. You've got the French one, which is 16 amps. Can people in France pull 16 amps out of their wall sockets? Interesting. DK Denmark, I presume the Danish one, also 16 amps. But here, the Swiss one, you can only pull 10 amps. Ah, shame. And indeed, it does have a 13 amp fuse in the plug there. So I should be able to pull through this plug the full 3 kilowatts, which is the amount of heating I've got in the shed. It will be, I think the Antminers are 800 watts, 800 watts and 1200 watts. So it's not quite 3 kilowatts, but it's approaching that. But it's all got to go through this one plug. And then I'll plug this into that sort of caravan consumer unit type thing that I've got in the shed. And that'll free up the other 2 sockets on that unit for other mainsy things, which will be very useful. So let's start by plugging this thing in and seeing what it does. Plug it in there. And it doesn't appear to do anything, but if you press the switch, then it switches that light on, it switches these 3 lights on. So you do have this switch which enables you to switch on the sockets. Now I can hear, I think, that the relay click is actually multiple relay clicks. Have a listen. So I'm pretty certain there are 3 relays in there. I don't know whether or not these things are switchable. I can't see why they would be. I've actually got a little USB light here, so let's plug that in. And that appears to be on all the time. And that's a really useful thing actually out in the shed, because I've got a security camera which can use this. My network switch and Wi-Fi access point uses 5 volts, so that can use another one of these sockets. And then there are a couple more for just anything else I need. But it's this ability to remotely from an app switch these sockets on and off to enable me to power up the heaters, which I think is where this device is going to come in really handy. Oh, the other thing I noticed about this is if you press and hold this power switch for a few seconds, then that starts flashing, and I'm pretty sure that's some sort of Zigbee radio I'm trying to pair with the gateway type thing. But I'm actually not going to attempt to do that initially. I want to take this apart first because I want to see what's inside it. I want to see the 3 relays. I can see from my power meter, I'm not sure whether I can show you this, but with this in this state, it's drawing 0.5 watts. And if I turn on the relays, it's actually drawing 2.7 watts. So these relays look like they're pulling about 400 milliamps. No, 400 milliwatts each. Now I suppose for my application where I'm putting heaters in here, then the relay draw is fairly insignificant, but it's worth knowing that the relays are permanently energized. They're not these slide over relays. These ones are being held down with a magnetic force the whole time that these sockets are on. So on the back we've got screw covers, and they do feel loose actually, so I should be able to just lift these out. This doesn't make a lot of sense. It says warning, do not connect after each other. What on earth does that mean? Do not connect after each other. Well, I don't know what that means. Oh, I think I do know what that means. I think what it's saying is don't plug a USB extension lead into another extension lead. Don't daisy chain extension leads, particularly not these wireless controlled ones, but as a general rule of thumb, you shouldn't daisy chain extension leads in any case. Right, I need to get these little covers out. Okay, I've got one out, and what have we got? Toblerone style triangular screw. Have I got one of those? Well, I haven't got that actual triangular bit, which looks like that, but I do have a tri-wing sort of Phillips type thing, and that seems to work, so I'll struggle my way around these and we'll get the thing apart. Well, that was a bit of a battle, but they're all out and nothing's too mangled. Right, let's get this back off. Oh yeah, that comes off quite nicely. And what can we see? Something covered in, and I'm guessing this is the wireless thing. Mainsy stuff. I'm not plugged in, am I? No. And, oh, does that come out? Not immediately. There's one screw there, another screw there, and something, as I say, covered with this plastic. So let's get the plastic off and see what that is. Right, this block here is actually mains fed. You can see the blue and brown wires in there. So it looks like it's just a switch mode power supply with, we've got fuse, choke. Is that common mode? Looks common mode. Class X capacitor, 4 of the USB outputs, and between the USB outputs you've got 2 6-pin SOT23s. I'll try and get the number off those to see how smart they are and whether they're QC3. They might just be 5 volts smart, but I don't know whether they also can do 9 and 12 volts. We'll take a look. Opto isolator here, which is part of the feedback for the mains power supply, transformer there, switching MOSFET, and possibly a diode. Oh, I don't know. Some capacitors in there. So this is just a power supply to take from the mains and give you 4 lots of 5 volts. Let's just take a look at the smart chips in there. Well, they say 6812 on them, and a quick check, I can't find anything on them. I must admit, my gut feeling is that they're going to be smart in the sense that they control the 2 center pins of the USB sockets, D plus and D minus, for things like the old Apple resistor matrix type thing. But I don't think they're QC3, because this looks like it's a 5 volt fixed voltage power supply. These 3 capacitors down here are 6.3 volts. So it doesn't look to me like there's anywhere on here that could generate the 9 or 15 or 12 or 15 that QC3 would require. So no, I think they're just old style 5 volt smart USB sockets. That doesn't bother me. I don't need quick charge on the USB, so that's fine. Okay, now let's get the socket part of this out, and I can see already, oh, it's hard to see, but there are 3 black boxes here, which I'm pretty sure are the relays. Let's get the screws out. Right, to lie this thing completely face up, I'm going to need to take off the 2 screws holding this strain relief in, so I'll do that and get this face up. Right, there it is. I'm just going to take a look in here just for a second, because we've got the sliding shutter arrangement where pushing the earth pin in opens the shutters for the other 2 pins. So they're built into the lid there. And then inside here we've just got 3 sort of folded over sprung receptacles for live, neutral and earth. We've got the 3 relays here. Now, interestingly, there's a little module down here which is almost certainly going to be the Zigbee module. I think there's a 5 volt power supply here, because on the back of the board there's ground, 5 volts, and there's also V3.3. I'm just wondering actually if that comes off the Zigbee module. Maybe that takes 5 volts in and puts a small amount of 3.3 out. I don't know where it would be used on here. We've got some LEDs. There's 1 per socket, which we saw light up when I pressed the button. There's the button. Here there's the LED that lights up above the button, but there are 2 LEDs here, so I think the red one is the one that flashes when the wireless module is trying to do pairing or trying to see other, or trying to find the gateway possibly. That's what the red light does. The red LED probably comes straight off that module, it looks like. Now this is interesting. Down here it says Tuya, and I was watching a couple of YouTube videos on smart home devices, and some chap was reviewing this device. He didn't take it apart, obviously, and he said it seems to be compatible with his Tuya systems. So maybe this is actually made by Tuya. Their name certainly seems to be on the board. So the relays are these AFE ones. They're 5 volt relays, so the coil is 5 volts, but the contacts are rated 16 amps at 250 volts AC, so that's enough for the 13 amps that you could potentially push through that relay. It's got a little transistor driver for the relay. Presumably there's a diode in there as well to quench the back EMF. Looks like there are transistors on each of these LEDs as well. And then there are a bunch of lines here that run back to some wires here. And if you flip it over, they do appear to run back to the Zigbee 3 module. So it looks like this module has a bunch of outputs. How many connections are there on this thing? It looks like 6 plus 5, 11 connections. 3 of them then presumably are enables for switching these relays on and off, and I assume, I mean I don't know this yet, when I get the app I'll see whether we can individually switch these sockets. I'm sure you will be able to. What it looks like to me is that you can't switch the USB, and why would you want to? So it looks to me like mains is just routed through this board, the big board, comes straight onto this board, provides a 5-volt power supply for these USBs, and they're going to be always on as long as the smart USB, the smart extension lead with switchable outputs is plugged into the mains. And I quite like the idea that you can't turn these off, because I'm going to use these for my security camera, my Wi-Fi access point, and probably actually also the gateway, because the gateway for this system, which communicates with this radio, is it takes a 5-volt supply, so I can take that from here. This will always be available. If this was switchable, you could get that situation where you could switch the 5 volts off, the gateway would go down, and then you couldn't turn it back on again. But it does look to me like these are on all the time. That's good. So the gateway, the Zigbee smart home gateway, can be powered here as well. So I'll make good utilization of these USBs. And then I've got 3 switchable mains outlets to individually switch on my Antminer heaters, so that I can do this preconditioning of the cabin, the workshop. It's interesting, this board has UK on it, and so they've had to make a specific UK version of this PCB. I presume there are Schuko versions and the US socket. French is the same as German, I think. So there are probably 3 or 4 different variants of this board, but this one is very specifically the 3-pin UK and Cyprus and Malta and Ireland style socket, because these pieces of bent metal solder directly down into the PCB. So all your mains actually is going through all of this lot. Let's take a look at whether that's man enough to take 3 kilowatts. Well, Live comes in here and is routed around here. They've got a sort of fat track, and they've obviously left areas of it uncovered by solder resist so that they can tin this to slightly increase the thickness for the current handling. But that doesn't look... Do you know, I'd be very tempted to put the highest current device here, nearest the incoming mains. Where's neutral? Neutral's there and soldered very close to the incoming neutral, but then the other 2 neutrals, it's running through PCB tracks. 3 kilowatts, that's 12 amps. Well, 13 amps I suppose if you pull, what do they say, 3120 watts. Is that slightly under 13 amps? I can't work it out in my head. So Live coming in there. Where's the Live, the first Live? Is it there? Oh, it's switched of course through the relay. Yeah, so Live comes in there. There's the relay contact, and that goes to the first Live there. But then Live to the other 2 runs through this fat track, bolstered slightly with solder, but it's not everywhere. It's sort of solder tin plated, but they've not actually run a bead of solder across the whole thing. I suppose I could do that. But anyway, it's all CE certified, and so I suppose they've got enough copper. Maybe this is heavyweight copper on here. Maybe it's 2-ounce copper instead of 1 ounce or something. But anyway, yes, they're putting all the mains through PCB tracks. Right, I'm going to put this back together because I keep flexing these here. And although they've got a bead of silicone on there, it doesn't seem to be holding them very well. So the more waggling of these, the weaker they're going to get. I mean, this thing doesn't draw a lot of current on the mains. nevertheless, let's get it all back in its plastic housing and get the screws back in. Now, Zigbee nerds, just before I do that, might want to see that. There's a QR code thing there. It's also called a TYZS6. I'll see if I can get around the other side of that module. And that looks like that. I don't think there's much to see on there. It's got 100 written on the back and possibly 2013. Interesting. This it's only held on with 2 screws. I think I've used all the screws. And I was thinking, well, this is going to flex a bit when you plug your plugs into here. But I've now noticed that there are these support pillars on the back moulding, and they appear to push down on these 3 points. So I guess that's what takes the strain when you insert sockets into here. Just check whether that button's working. That's fine. Right, let's get these triangular screws back in. Oh, I didn't put this thing back. Is this really necessary? I mean, it covers the back of this board, but there's nothing covering the back of this board. Oh, I'll shove it back on anyway. Actually, I don't think I mentioned the price of this. This was £20, £19.99, and the gateway unit was also £20. There were only 3 of these left, and that's kind of what accelerated my decision to buy this. I was thinking, if I don't get it now, because you know what Lidl's like. Once they sell out, they don't get these things back for a while, if ever. There were lots of those gateways, and I must admit I was tempted to just wait and see if they marked the gateways down, but you can never be sure. They either mark them down and then you can get one cheap, or they just take them off the shelves and that's it. You never see them again. Right, that's all back together. I've plugged it in. That seems to be trying to do a pairing or a searching for the gateway or something. And the relays still work, and the mains appears to still work. Where's that little USB light? Let's plug that in, just make sure the USB is still putting out 5 volts. Yeah, that one. What about the next one? Yeah, so that all seems to be working again. Now what I'm going to do is load the app on my tablet. I'm not going to go through a whole explanation of how that's done. That's not really the sort of thing I do. So I'm just going to try and muddle my way through it. But what I really want to find out is whether the app can individually control these 3 sockets. I'd be interested to know that. So just a quick look at the gateway. Here it is. It's just a square box of about that size. It's got 2 lights, status and LAN. So LAN presumably lights up when you've got some Ethernet. 5 volt powered. And I've got some Ethernet just down here. So I'll plug that into this box, put some power on it. In here you also get a LAN cable. Quite an interesting one actually. A sort of strange flat LAN cable. And you get a UK power plug 5 volt thing to power this. Although, as I say, this I think could be powered off these. In fact, that's what I'm going to do. Well, this all seems to have gone reasonably smoothly. I had to create an account, make my gateway, set the gateway up. So that all seems to be okay. I don't think there's anything on there not allowed to see. Right, Zigbee gateway, online devices, added devices. You haven't added any devices. I will add my power strip device and then we'll see what it does. Well, that seems to work. 1 devices have been successfully added. Power strip, done. Done. Let's see what I can do. Oh, power strip I can now actually control. 100%. What's it doing? Aha, so we have, schedules and countdowns. Now the schedule could be quite handy, and I do believe that the schedules include things like so many hours after dawn, and so many hours before dusk you can switch on and off. I've got a power switch there. What does that do? Let's put that there. That light's not really helping, is it, that USB light? But this USB is going to the gateway, so that's actually powering the gateway. What does this power switch do? Oh, that turns them on, but it went diddle-em. Yeah, so it's sending out 3 codes in quick succession. So you see it, but here's what I really want to know. Can I do them individually? And yes, it seems you can. Yes, so you can control the 3 sockets separately through this nice big easy to use interface, or you can switch them all on like that. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like that. Now I'm not sure whether you get whether this indicator here, that darkened circle, is actually a confirmation that comes back from this unit saying yes, I've actually achieved the pulling in of the relay. You can see only one of the 3 lights is on there. I don't know that, but of course if I'm putting my miners in here, the ant miners will connect to the mining pool, and I can see from the mining pool interface whether they're actually on or off. So I've got my own confirmation. I don't need a confirmation, but yeah, I don't know whether this is just a local switching. It does seem to be... There does seem to be a small delay, so maybe this is actually fed back from this device saying, yes, I successfully received the command and actioned what you wanted to do. But I don't know that because I don't know much about how this Zigbee system works. But yeah, that certainly works. I'm very happy with that. That's going to do what I planned to do with this thing. So I guess this now has to move out to the shed. And I'll wire the heaters up to this board. But anyway, that's it for today. I just wanted to have a look inside this thing, see whether I could individually switch these sockets, which I can. So that's all good. Well, so for the moment, I was just thinking actually, what does this do? And it does switch them on and switch them off. Oh yeah, and you get that. Do you get feedback on here? I did. Oh yes. Oh, it's quite delayed. And off again. But then there might be problems with this connecting to Wi-Fi because it's sitting right next to the Zigbee transceiver. Incidentally, the box for this thing said Zigbee has a range of 70 meters, which is a lot. I mean, I could conceivably have that gateway unit in the house and this out in the shed, but there's no logic to doing that. I'm only going to be controlling stuff in the shed, so I might as well put the gateway in the shed. I do have LAN in the shed. I've got a spare LAN port on my switch. Yeah, so that's it. That's all I wanted to do today. Cheerio.